We used an online experiment to better understand how people take risks in different situations. We developed an online game in which participants were asked to pick a football team, because we thought this would be more accessible to them than the abstract game theory that is often used. Participants were shown players in a way that is done in computer games and asked to choose under different situations. This is decision making. The portraits of the players were randomly assigned so we can test whether racial bias affects risk preferences. On the one hand, we can show that when the costs of discriminations are higher, there is less discrimination. This is what economists predict. In the game, some participants were given an additional incentive to select more skilled players. This financial incentives meant that participants paid less attention to skin color and chose more skilled players. On the other hand, we can also show that increasing the costs of discrimination can trigger implicit racial bias. This may seem counterintuitive. In the game, when participants were faced with the risky choices in a lottery, we found that those with an additional financial incentive were more likely to play so as not to end up with a player with dark skin. In other words, we can show that the presence of a racial marker, skin color, alters people's risk preferences when their decisions have costly consequences. Participants assess the risk differently. This is what we call implicit racial bias, and this implicit racial bias may be part of the reason why members of visible minority groups often face discrimination in competitive markets, such as getting a job or finding a place to live. We see the world and risk differently when racial minorities are present.